it's important to know your geography. This is Europe. The Balkans is the third peninsula from the left. The Balkans has always been the occupied part of ancient Greece, Rome, Turkey, France, Austro-Hungarian and numerous other civilizations, empires, kingdoms and democracies. The Balkans is a part of everywhere. Balkan borders change through violence, just like they do everywhere. But in the Balkans, borders need extra time to settle. This is why, in addition to world wars, the Balkans has also waged its own special wars. The Balkans is a macho metaphor. A wise man once said, "When I hear Balkan leaders talking about language, I know there will be a war." Interestingly, almost every European language has collided and fought wars in the Balkans at some point. The Balkans is loud in every language. The countries of West Balkans are surrounded by countries of the European Union. The Balkans is the Switzerland of the Balkans. A global wave of illiberal democracies and general populism have been dragging Balkan states back into geopolitical darkness. Sometimes it looks like the Balkans is the only reason for geopolitics. The Balkans is looking for a way out. In the Balkans, it is easy to live in the past, but recent studies have shown that most people will live in the future. All this time, forward-thinking people from non-governmental organizations, human rights activists, and independent media, as well as artists, a large number of artists, have been refusing to accept Balkanized time and space. The Balkans is not just a stereotype. As an instrument of change, the European Fund for the Balkans is turning all its engines on, developing the human capital of the region, because nothing breaks the spells of geopolitics like committed, skilled and empowered people. The Balkans is coming soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, good evening and welcome to the European Fund for the Balkans 10th anniversary event. Now, I know for some of you in the room, 10 years can be a long, long time for something, certainly. But for others, 10 years, certainly what we're about to discuss tonight and tomorrow has gone very, very quickly indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to this fantastic event. 10 years gone by very, very quickly indeed, all here to discuss what it is and what the essence of the Balkans within Europe, by people from Europe, but also naturally by people from the region as well. Before we go any further, just let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Peter Hopwood, and maybe you're wondering, what is my connection with the Balkans? Well, my connection is very simple. I've lived in Croatia for the last 17 years. My work, what I do, I actually help people stand on stages just like this, in front of groups of people just like you. I'm a keynote speaking coach. I work with politicians, I work with businesses, I work with institutions to help them tell better stories. Now, over today, tonight, and tomorrow, we're going to hear lots and lots of stories, lots of great stories that we can learn from, and ideas and insights as well. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go any further on to the next stage, let me just introduce to you a lady who's going to give you more of a flavour, more of an insight, an overview of literally why you're here and what this is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Executive Director of the European Fund for the Balkans, Ms. Hedvig Morvai.
I hope that I turned on my microphone. Yes. Okay. Great. There are vintage years in wine and vintage years in history, and 2007 was definitely one of the latter. Because not just the iPhone emerged in 2007, a whole group of companies emerged in and around that year. Twitter started to scale globally. Google bought YouTube and launched Android. Bitcoin was established, Amazon released Kindle, big data was made accessible to everyone. It was the beginning of the exponential rise in solar and wind energy, biofuels, LED lighting, energy-efficient buildings, and the electrification of vehicles. Together, these new companies and innovations have reshaped how people and machines communicate, create, collaborate, and think. I quoted the book, Thank You for Being Late, from Thomas L. Friedman. The European Fund for the Balkans was born in the same year, in 2007. At a time when Europe seemed to be set on a more or less good course, Romania and Bulgaria has joined the European Union, and the Lisbon Treaty was signed to reform the constitutional basis of the Union. The Western Balkan countries at different stages of democratic consolidation were driven to implement the necessary reforms by the 2003 Thessaloniki Summit promise of their European future. The EFB was created as a unique instrument to facilitate the Europeanization of the region in the sense of bringing it closer to the EU, to the alliance of nations built on an uncompromising commitment to peace, openness, and democracy. Certainly not an easy task, but success seemed inevitable, and the founding principles of the EU appeared unshakable, solid, and attractive. Now let's move fast forward to remind us what happened in the world in the meantime. The United States of America elected its first African-American president who campaigned for hope and change. However, very soon a credit crunch pushed the world into recession. Hope moved to the Middle East, but winter came too soon to most of the countries affected by the Arab Spring. Syria became a polygon for a proxy war involving numerous powers. Waves of refugees flooded European borders, causing a crisis that led to the rise of right-wing populism all over the continent. Ukraine was changed by the Maidan Revolution and then hit by conflicts in the east of the country. Russia annexed Crimea. The West introduced sanctions against Russia. The economic collapse in Greece threatened the collapse of the Eurozone. The first terrorist state in the world was established. David Cameron's tragic gambling on the EU referendum kick-started Great Britain's departure from the EU. In the US, a former reality TV star got elected as its 45th president. North Korea developed a rocket capable of reaching the US coast. And it turned out that Facebook sold our souls, or its data footprint if you want, to the devil. I could go on demonstrating how dramatically the world changed since we took on our task in the region of the Western Balkans. In the years that followed the launch of the fund, and especially since the global financial crisis hit the European Union, the state of play has begun to move in a direction where enlargement came under threat from the EU itself. The accession process became even more complex, not only extensive, with a tendency to produce ever more encompassing conditions that expand across policy areas, but also multi-layered. The EU perspective became only a perspective, without a clear vision about the actual accession for the remaining Western Balkan countries. In addition to the challenges of political and economic transformation, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro and Serbia remained weak states with dysfunctional institutions, notwithstanding the considerable diversity among them. Although the dynamics of the EU integration appear to have introduced a new phase of political relations in the region, ethno-nationalist rhetoric remains potent in its parts, while statehood continues to be contested and the number of bilateral and internal problems remain unresolved. While governments pledge their devotion to the EU and to their country's accession, a large number of informal economic and political elites continue to manipulate the ethno-nationalist mobilization for their own private economic interests and for the preservation of political power. There is a proven record of stagnation and backsliding in all key governance indicators across the countries of the region. The current situation can be best described as the consolidation of unconsolidated democracies. Moreover, with growing Russian, Turkish, and other third-party influence, Europeanization in the Western Balkan countries is no longer the only game in town, with its alternatives posing serious security challenges for the states, the region, and ultimately for the European Union itself. To answer these challenges, the European Fund for the Balkans developed and implemented programs aimed at building the professional and administrative capacities of young government officials, supporting initiatives allowing youth in the Western Balkans to experience and learn about Europe, supporting individual and collaborative research and policy development projects, and creating a policy and advocacy platform promoting the European integration and the consolidation of democracies in the region. In addition, the European Fund for the Balkans supported a number of civil society initiatives across the Western Balkans, fresh ideas and endeavors to accelerate the reform process and promote public engagement on the path to EU integration. These activities contributed to developing the European Fund for the Balkans as the first cross-cutting community and policy actor in the region. The European Fund for the Balkans of today is a non-governmental regional cooperation tool with a highly experienced knowledge network operating in a complex environment and constantly searching for innovative ways and tools for reaching its objectives. The European Fund for the Balkans is a living testimony to the power of collaboration, not only among the visionary private European foundations which established the fund and remained committed to it throughout all these years, the Robert Bosch Foundation, the Erste Foundation, and the King Baudouin Foundation, but as a cooperation mechanism reaching out to key stakeholder groups both in the region and across Europe. The faith in a common European future led the Balkans out of the dark heritage of the 90s. The flag bearers of geopolitics want us to see the current series of crises in the EU as an argument against its existence. However, if your car gets broken, you repair it, you don't switch back to a donkey. For us at the EFB today, this means a strong commitment to foster a new narrative on the European Balkans, which has to prove its ability and willingness to become part of the solution with a clear vision on the EU of tomorrow. In that sense, we remain committed to supporting the democratic transformation and tangible structural developments in the region. And we are convinced that fundamental change begins with individuals being inspired, challenged, and allowed to pursue and push their own efforts for reform in their respective countries. We believe that creating functional links in the region, connecting people and institutions is still crucial for any development in the Western Balkans. In spite of the great technological innovations and opportunities which we all have available for enhancing our communications and interactions, direct people-to-people contacts are essential for building trust and efficient cooperation mechanisms what will benefit us all. Therefore, we regret to still be faced with challenges as difficulties at our border crossings and unnecessary obstacles put by questionable political interests. One of our fellows and community members from Pristina, Florim Kanoli, could not join us for this event, exactly because of such obstacles, and we regret his absence. This year is considered as the year of opportunity for the Western Balkans. At the same time, it means a great responsibility both for the region and for the EU. In this context, the work of the European Fund for the Balkans is perhaps even more necessary for transforming the countries of the Western Balkans into prosperous and stable European democracies than it was in the context of the fund's inception. Here I wish to mention the names of the deserving individuals from the fund's closest circles who have personally contributed to its growth and success, many of them being with the fund for 10 years. Sandra Breka, Atje Drexler, Boris Marte, Franz Karprüle, Knut Neumeier, Filip Radunovic, Erhard Busek, Luc Taillard de Borms, Gary Traus, Fabrice de Kerkhoff, Mario Giovannini, Licoro Russo Perez, Natasha Smiljanic, Igor Bandovic, Branka Panic, Elena Petkovska-Đorđevska, Biljana Meškovska, Milena Stefanović, Jovana Jovanović, Ivana Rajlić, Ivana Perišić, Aleksandra Čurčić, Nusret Efendić, Nebojša Mule, Marko Drajić, and Ana Marjanović. However, the EFB magic would not have happened without the members of the EFB community, the members of the BIEPAG initiative, and the circle of great colleagues, supporters, advocates, and friends of the fund. And I have to say that most of you are here with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, welcome. Besides our strong belief that the Balkans must become an active part in designing the future of Europe, we also believe that the region must catch up with the rapidly changing and reshaped world. That is the guiding idea behind this event. Our intention was to create an atmosphere where we can shake up the status quo in discussing the future, where misconceptions can be challenged, and where thinking without a box is encouraged. So let's take this journey together, starting here tonight. Thank you.
Right, as you've heard, a delightful way to kick off the event. What I'm going to do, I'm going to actually ask, can we put the lights on slightly higher up here, please? Thank you so much. Right, so just a few things before we get going, before we move on to our next session. Remember, everything that happens here in this room doesn't stay in this room. We're actually live on YouTube, so if you go to the European Fund for the Balkans YouTube channel, you can pass that on to your colleagues within the Balkans, colleagues within Europe, colleagues around the world if you wish, because as I say, everything that happens right here in this room on our 10th anniversary event will be is being broadcast right now, right through those lenses across the world on YouTube. Also, we have our hashtag EFB10, so across social media, please share away what you see, what you feel, the quotes, some sentences, golden nuggets, sentences that you hear that sound good, that you think, yeah, actually, that's a really good sentence, that's a quote that should be shared across. Share it, and then let others know exactly what's happening right here in this room here in Belgrade. Okay. Let's move on now to our next session. Our next session, our main first session really, is all about just a brief, delightful perspective of really 10 years ago, how it all started, how it moved forward to today, and maybe more importantly, what the way forward for the EFB. So please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for three distinguished guests who are going to join me on stage, and we're going to dive into a healthy, productive discussion all about what it actually means and the way forward as well. So please, can you put your hands together firstly from the Robert Bosch Foundation, Atje Dressler. We also have from the King Baudouin Foundation, Gerrit Rouse. And finally, from the Erste Foundation, Boris Marte. Right, so let's get straight down to it. The light is very bright, is it not? Yes, it is. Can I ask if we can put those lights down slightly and put up the house lights slightly? Can we do that? Hopefully we can. Right.
Thank you.
Can we get the lights up slightly on the stage, slightly higher? I'm talking to myself, I think. Am I? Maybe. Okay, right. The first thing... Are we there? It's the chandelier, that beautiful chandelier. There we are. Right, so... Right, the first thing I'm going to say is, when I say to you the European Fund for the Balkans, and this is something that has been part of your professional lives for about 10 years now, So you've heard those words many, many, many times. When I say them to you, what are the first words, or let's say adjectives, that come to mind?
If it doesn't have to be adjective.
Doesn't have to be an adjective.
Okay, the first word
As long
that
as
comes
it's
to my
polite.
mind is a community. The second is regional actor.
The first one was the same, community. I mean, look around. This is very impressive. The second one, similar, bridgehead between the EU and this region. And the third one, we have at least one adjective, credible.
Alcohol. No, not kidding, but I mean, when I talk about EFB, I remember that we started off in Sarajevo 10 years ago, and my colleague in the foundation, he got completely drunk there. And I remember that this was fantastic. He was so drunk, he was helpless drunk, and we were
He was helplessly drunk. He was laying. It was a comic night.
I'm so happy that we had those ashtrays in the hotel. So, you know, there was we saved ourselves from ashtray to bring him in his room. So this was fantastic. So this was just saying a bit of the emotion and the passion we put into this project from our side, at least. We managed to survive the Sarajevo opening, so what a great day.
What a great night. What a great night that was.
To have some alcohol afterwards and maybe to get drunk as we went 10 years ago, right?
Well, guess what? A little birdie tells me tonight, it may not be as wild as that Sarajevo night. However, there may be ashtrays and there may be glasses of drink a little bit later on. We'll go on to that a little bit later. Right, so moving on. So again, I mean, from the founders, really, the foundations that kind of initiated the whole idea 10 years ago, very, 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 very different time than it is today. Just describe a little bit about the process of what it was then and how we've got to today.
I think 10 years ago, we would have loved not to stand here anymore, in a certain way. I mean, our framework at that time was the International Commission of the Balkans, which we co-funded together with some of our American friends. And they put into the perspective that in Sarajevo, not in 2007, but in 2014, all countries of the region would have joined the EU. So that was a little bit the spirit at that time. And we were very, and I agree with Boris, we were very passionate about the fund. It was really something we all felt very strong about, and we still do. We still do, despite the fact that some things haven't changed, neither in the EU, neither in the region, the way we would have loved to.
Okay. No, I think, look, 10 years ago, we took things for granted. We told you, and we told everybody, the EU is the place to go. Because everything there is democratic, rule of law, and all these nice things you need for a modern democracy, right? This is not the situation we have today. Probably we made a mistake because we took the things for granted. Today we cannot say go into the European Union because there everything is nice. Probably the most, no, I'm sorry for that, but probably the Balkans became more European and Europe more like the Balkans. I don't know. And maybe this is a stupid example, right? But still, there might be a small truth. Because it's up to every single person who is sitting in this room that the future we want to achieve has a real chance to come true. It's not something we can, hand over to somebody else and to say somewhere else they're going to care about how this part of Europe will develop. or how Europe will develop. That's over. That was 10 years ago. Now it's different, because we all know that inside the European Union, we have exactly the same challenges as you have. So there is no difference anymore. There's not something saying, here are the Balkans and here's the rest. That's over. We are all in the same boat. And it's up to you individually, and up to us, and up to the European funds, how we develop, we can say the world, but let's say the world in this very, very beautiful place. So I think that for me is the most important thing what changed. That we just, we were a bit naive. We thought coming into the European Union, then everything is nice. And obviously, as we see in Hungary or in Poland or in other states, it is not. So it isn't a guarantee. We all have to keep our ears very open and our eyes very open in order to be reflective and engaged, to fight what we all here together think is the right thing to do.
So at the beginning, I mentioned at the beginning 10 years, celebrating 10 years, and I said naturally for many of us that can go by very, very slowly indeed, but for others quite quickly when things are going well. If I ask you some of the highlights, many things I'm sure, ups and downs, lots of challenges, lots of things happening over 10 years, but if I say to you highlights, what are the things that kind of pop up in your mind that you can share with us? Apart from Sarajevo nights, having wild nights in Sarajevo.
Well, that's always a highlight, but apart from that, I would say things like when Vicinities was launched, or when Vicinities became really, really popular, or the way the fund took up the challenge of the Berlin process and established itself as the one civil society actor being able to speak for the region. So this, for me, this is one of the not a highlight as in a day. It's just an amazing achievement that I think we can be very proud of, that this has happened.
I think many foundations don't have a lot of patience, and they want to move too quickly, and they want to change things overnight. I'm not talking politics here, but in strategies and things like that. I think one of the wise things the EFB has done, they sticked to some of the projects that are there from the start, that are very powerful. Think and Link, the fellowship program, very good programs. And then when time has come, they changed and made it even better with BPAC. For me, it's very difficult to highlight some projects. I think it's an overall success because of its, not in all aspects, but because of its stability and its determination towards the goals. And despite the changing environment, the vision, and that's more the vision of the people in the staff than in the end the people maybe behind the scenes, has been the same in a certain way, and has been always to the same values and principles. And I admire them for that work.
I think what was just great was that Robert Bosch from Germany, King Baudouin from Brussels, Belgium, Compagnia di San Paolo in the beginning from Italy, and Erste Foundation from small Austria, that those foundations came together to do a project together. You know, there are not so many European projects of European foundations where they work together.
For 10 years.
For 10 years, right.
And we still like each other.
We were in a partnership for 10 years.
In the same nights.
Right. So this is something very special. But let me say something. It wouldn't have happened if there wouldn't have been so much passion and so much energy from Hedwig and her team. So what, Hedwig, you have done and what your people have done is just fantastic. And I think this kind of emotion and feeling this kind of urgency made us foundation feel important. Because, wait. Because if we wouldn't have people like Hedwig and a team like Hedwig, what would we foundations be? Nothing. Well, yeah, we would exist, but we need people like her and like her team. So I think combining this passion with the urgency that something has to happen is, I think, what made this fund so important. You know, you can think and sit and have think tanks. Wonderful. But basically you change through action. And I think what the fund did perfectly is combine those two things. Don't act before you think, right? But thinking alone won't change the world. So I think these are the combinations. So I think, first of all, the foundations who stepped back and took responsibility, and a passionate team who took leadership. And this is, I think, what we all can learn. You know, taking leadership and taking responsibility. If we go forward like this, I think the European funds for the Balkans will change a lot also in the future.
Great, it's really great. And I'm sure you can feel and actually see just on stage the passion and the energy of people that are behind these foundations, but then they're not just people who just support and step back. They're actually people who actually have hands-on, who do things hands-on with what we do here as well. Now, we've spoken a lot about great things. I'm going to ask you now one question, one regret. Over 10 years, if there's one regret you have, what would it be? Professionally, that is. Yeah, not nothing. About the EFB, okay.
About the EFB, one regret I have is that I haven't been here more often. The other...
Why is that? Why is that?
It's not because of the wild nights. It's just when you actually get into the community, I know about it, but I am hardly ever able to be part of it or see it and experience it in person. But every time you have the chance, it really sort of inspires you again and makes you understand that the work you fund is relevant for a lot of people. So I missed out on a lot of the opportunities to sort of re-energize myself with this wonderful community. I think the other regret that I have is that we have lost our Italian colleagues. Not only for the food they brought into the meetings, but it's a pity that the company is no longer around, and I still dearly miss them.
On the same line, I think the only regret is that we didn't succeed in enlarging the ring of funders. I mean, it's good to be together for 10 years. It's really good, and it's rare. But we would have loved that more other funders would have stepped in, because the EFB deserves more money than it gets from us.
Okay. Is there a funder here? No, I completely agree. So I think, you know, there's so much at stake in this fund, and there's so much at stake in this region, because we see, and all of us see, we observe some developments also here in this region we absolutely don't like. So we need power. And for this power, we have to create this kind of counter-narrative that we're ready. Some people in this region, like some people in Europe too, start to play really a dirty game. Are we prepared for that? And I think we have to ask this question: would we found the European funds for the Balkans in the same way as we funded it 10 years ago? You have to give the answer.
Okay, and really now for the last couple of questions. If we look, so you mentioned earlier on that you shouldn't really be here after 10 years, but if we look into the future, jump into the future, into 10 years' time, all of us, 10 years wiser, 10 years older, 10 years more of the EFB, where would you see, if we were talking again in 10 years' time right here, right now, what would we be talking about? Yeah.
I would hope that we would be talking about the celebration of how the countries of the Western Balkans joined the European Union and refreshed it. So I'm quite visionary here. I don't know whether this is going to happen, but this would be a lovely party. Celebrating also in our words that we're not talking about the Balkans here and Europe there, which we still tend to do, even tonight. But talk about this as a whole, and not only talk about it in that way, but really feel it. It's one. It is not something where you add the Balkans somewhere down there, you know, right-hand side, but an integral part of Europe, and everybody understands it that way, not only here. So maybe we would need another fund again to explain, or some other work, that the Balkans actually are part of Europe to those that don't believe it, which are quite many, where you are around, so where people deal with enlargement professionals. So maybe there's a point to that as well, and I hope that we would overcome this. There's Europe and there's the Balkans.
Okay.
Very short. We will be here again on the same stage, and we will be more optimistic. Maybe not because all the countries have joined or not joined. That might be not a crucial question at that moment in time. Even I still definitely hope this is the way to go. We will be more optimistic because I strongly believe also what Boris said, the counter-narrative, the counter-movement will come. And we need people like all the people here in the room, but everybody else, wherever in Europe, who is playing this similar role and taking the same responsibilities. I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic, and I will hope that within 10 years from now I will be able to prove that I was right 10 years ago.
I have some hopes. So I hope that there is peace in this region. I hope that we will have free mobility for everybody, no matter where he or she comes from. I hope that we still have and will have resilient kind of democracies here and in other parts of Europe. So these are hopes. And I think if somebody can keep up this hope and work on it and work with it, especially with the emotion behind it, triggering a new generation who comes up and is ready to fight for those values, then I think we will have a great party in 20 years. You know, 10 years now is a strange... You have children? I don't know, some of you have children, you have a daughter or a son who is 10. It's really strange, right? Not a child anymore, but still not grown up. Critical moment in life, looking for, you know, truth. Oh my God. I have a daughter at that age, not easy. Trying to, you know, find her own identity. How do we love identity questions in our region, right? So 20 years already, you know, she probably will be grown up, maybe a little job, maybe independent. Hey, they're going to be independent from us. So, you know, probably you don't need us anymore in 20 years because, at 20 years, but in 10 years from now. European Fund is 20, right?
Yeah, but still somebody who's
Grown-up
20,
girl.
still somebody who's 20, still now and again needs advice, needs guidance, needs to be...
But they don't like it.
They don't like it, but it may have to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're coming towards the end of this quite healthy, productive discussion, but I believe there's one last announcement
Yes.
that the panel would like to make.
Yeah, no, I have a really stupid story now. Sorry for that.
Another one.
No, Franz Karl.
We've only got a couple of minutes.
My colleague Franz Karl and myself, we sat today at the airport in Vienna, and we thought about what to say here on this stage. Well, what do you mean? Well, and then I observed an Asiatic cleaning lady running a big cleaning machine, right? So a huge machine on the airport, and she did it wonderful, you know. She went, you know, to have less air resistance. She went like this when she had to go fast, you know. She took every little corner. She was everywhere. She was happy. She was saying hello to the, you know, to the passengers. She was proud sitting there, like, you know, with her breast on this huge machine. She could show the world that she is somebody. And then I thought, oh yeah. This is a nice picture for Hedwig. She's like Hedwig. You know, Hedwig is also sitting on some kind of machine. She's proud to be there. You know, she's always there. She goes, you know, she's a bit of, you know, pushy. She attacks you when you are in the wrong. She looks at every corner. She takes care of the people. She also bows down when there is air coming against her. So I thought that's a very good example. And then Franz Karl said to me, "You know what, Boris?" And I said, "What, Franz Karl?" He said, "I really like people who love their job." This is great. So, as I said in the beginning, we wouldn't have been half as successful as Fund if there wouldn't have been Hedwig and her team. So, Hedwig, what you have managed, I think, is history. And I think everybody who is sitting here in the front row, Erhard, Hannes, Ivan, sorry, I know you all, but and even, foreign minister from Macedonia, everybody who's sitting here in the first row, Hedwig, probably would say the same. You made with your fund history. And all what we can do now is that we really thank you what you have achieved. We do it now with little flowers, but there will be a surprise coming up during the party. So be prepared for that. Thank you very much. Applause to Hedwig.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we wrap up our panel. Please put your hands together for Atje, Gerrit, and Boris. Ladies, it's worth the wait. It's actually worth the wait, believe me. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now very delighted and honored to have our next speaker on stage to share with you his insights in really what is quite an amazing, as we've already heard, an amazing idea indeed. Please welcome to the stage the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Macedonia, Mr. Nikola Dimitrov.
It's working now, I think. So I have a good speech here, but someone told me that it's not advisable to read when you deliver a keynote speech. So I will rather talk. I will put one disclaimer, and that is I was not trained by Peter. And I speak after this inspiring trio of the funders, of the representatives of the three foundations that have made this possible. So this is a disclaimer. I'm also very emotional. This is a very special treat, as only probably less than even a year ago I was part of the family. And in a way, I hope I still am. I'm still a nice guy, even though I've become a foreign minister. Someone said even. So I will do three things. I will tell you a bit of my story in a humble way, mostly to underline my experience with Hedwig and Igor and everyone in the fund and everyone in the Balkans and Europe Policy Advisory Group, Florian and the rest of the great people and the great brains that we need. Then I'm going to talk briefly about the story of Macedonia, which is a story of hope, I firmly believe, of these last 10, 11 months. And I will talk a little bit about the region and why I think we all can make a difference. this year and in the years to come. I was reaching the end of my term as an ambassador of Macedonia to the Netherlands when I was supposed to go to Moscow for my next post, and I felt that the country was going in the wrong direction and I couldn't really make a difference. I shared a level of responsibility. I couldn't really push or prevent mistakes and push it in the right direction. So I left and I joined a think tank, and I had to establish myself after 18 years with a country behind me on my own, in a world where researchers and great minds have been already working and giving great ideas about our region, the Balkans. So I felt lonely and challenged to take it up and put my act together. And it was in that context that I think it was first in Brussels and it was one of the projects of the fund, to have this TV show on European issues, reform, at the heart in Brussels, at the heart of the European Parliament in Brussels. I met Igor Bandovic, and this was the rule of law in the Balkans with a number of European parliamentarians. Then I met Hedvig in Graz, and then how it started. So I can feel only praise. I think this was not only about friendship, it was about meeting of people sharing a compatible or a similar sense of calling. How to make our region a better place. And I don't think this is only about joining Europe. If we join Europe tomorrow, the countries will be the same. This challenge is about changing our countries, making them better, making them more European, more what we like when we go to Germany or to the Netherlands or to France. And to me personally, and to many I think in our group, this is about rule of law. This is about checks and balances. It is about free media. It is about predictability. It is about having power checked and holding government officials to accountable. We in the region have had our experience with strongmen, people who can decide the destiny of any citizen on their own, whether it's about criminal proceedings, whether it's about a private company, whether it's about a newspaper. And we have failed. My personal experience with the story of Macedonia, which is somewhat more drastic because we actually heard it on tape. We had a wiretap affair, about 20,000 people were under surveillance in a country of 2 million, and there were strong indications of abuse of office, interference in the media, interference in the judiciary, pressure on civil servants to vote one way. And to me, and I had no political ambitions, when I heard that, I said, this is not my country. Macedonia is better than this. And what we had is a crisis of institutions that failed to react to the wrongdoing that we have all heard on tape, all of us, the citizens in the country. The result of 2.5 years of back and forth and political mobilization that was across political and ethnic lines is that we proved that actually Macedonia is better than that, and that our society is more resilient than our institutions. And that is why the biggest promise of this government is to build institutions, make them stronger, make sure that we have such system in place that no future abuse, regardless of whoever is in power, will be possible. We are doing our share of mistakes. One thing I've also learned in the crisis is that sincerity is important. In a country where Europe has the weakest leverage, because we've been blocked politically over an issue that is not exactly the Copenhagen criteria, Ribe, who was commissioned by, whose name is now, he is as famous and popular in the country as a Hollywood movie star. He is a German retired rule of law expert from the European Commission. He gathered a team, went in, had interviews, and produced a report. This report made a huge difference because it was bold. It called a spade, it was honest. And one of the lessons, I think, for all of us in our country is we need to be sincere. So I don't think we are ideal. I think we have a very genuine hunger to make it. When Macedonia got independent, I was 18. I am 45 today. And this is the last chance for my generation to give a decent start for the next one. So I feel after our share of mistakes, injustices, we like to be a victim in our region. We like to put the blame for our own issues to others, be it neighbors, be it Brussels, no one really likes us. It's in our hands. No one said building a European democracy will be easy. It's definitely in our hands. And I really think it starts with a genuine desire. And I was so happy a few days ago. Tomorrow I can't wait to read the European Commission report. And I hope that we're going to have a clean recommendation. The report of a house that is usually honest, the Freedom House. They measure democracy, they measure the freedom of the media. They said in their latest few days ago, Nations in Transit, that Macedonia was the biggest chance for a democratic breakthrough in Europe. And they went on to say that the country is small, but the opportunity is big. And that really sort of doubled my my level of adrenaline and enthusiasm that is, I think, required to simply push and go on. So now a bit about the region. Maybe last point on Macedonia. What we have managed to do is halt a negative dynamic. Us in the country, the Europeans, the Americans. It's really important now to achieve success. Because the trouble with trouble is it spreads if it's not attended. And I think once there is a potential for success, we have to make it. And success in our region, I think, comes from genuine political will to actually do the job at home, but also credible European perspective. And in between those two, we need a sincere relationship. There is a mistake, say it. There is something good, praise it. I think that's really important, and the Commission, with the latest strategy, is moving in that direction. Last few words about our region, as I think we are here in a very important country for our region, in Serbia. We have a sense of urgency that we really need to move our region forward. We live in a world where no one really knows what will happen tomorrow. All the framework of doing international relations and resolving problems that we used to take for granted since the Second World War is now somewhat shaky. It's unpredictable. Europe, our continent, is busy, soul-searching. Some countries were mentioned. I don't have the freedom to mention countries anymore, but I got your point. Brexit, the migration crisis, and all this debate about the future of Europe. And I love the idea of the airport, the departure hall and the boarding room here. I usually use the analogy of the train. We're trying to catch a moving train. And it's really high time to start resolving problems in a brave way, facing reality, and work together on our future. It's impossible for Macedonia to be a happy place, a successful, stable European democracy, if Serbia is not exactly the same. It's impossible to have a region if we every once in a while doubt the future or the functionality of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are in this boat, And I think the sooner we realize that, the easier it's going to be to resolve our problems. And the easier it's going to be to show and prove to our European friends that we are part of them. And I'd like to thank the funders. You're important. Please continue what you do. Hedvig and the team for putting reason and pragmatism and sometimes sanity in terms of our discussions on the current state of play in the Balkans and our future. I'd like to praise all of those government officials who are, I think, here, who have been part of the fellowship, although the BPAC members. My, let's say, last point, one of my more vivid memories is the declaration on bilateral disputes that BPAC promoted and drafted, that was signed by the 6 foreign ministers of the Balkans at the Vienna summit, the second edition of the Berlin process. It's important to resolve these bilateral disputes. Europe itself started as a mechanism, as an idea to resolve a dispute and reconcile France and Germany. And let's use this process to do that. I think this is the most important fight for our generation. I think if we all do what we can make a difference. This is really doable. And we in Macedonia, no one really, I don't know who would bet on the democratic opposition when the crisis started. Very few. We actually managed to pull a small miracle. Now we have a huge responsibility, we have huge expectations, and we have to tackle them with sincerity. But I think change for the better is possible, and the time to change our region for the better is now. Thank you so much, and congratulations for the 10th birthday.
Some wise words there on stage from Mikola. And don't you just, I fully agree with you, don't you just love the idea of walking into an event that actually feels like an airport terminal? The check-in area there as we walk through. It's very true. I saw 2 people as they walked through take off their shoes, take off their belts, take their money out, put it on the side, and waiting for that to beep as they went through, thinking it's a real terminal. Anyway, we move forward onto something quite special indeed. Over today, tomorrow as well, if someone was to ask you what were your highlights, I'm sure you would have many different things to say. Tomorrow, well worth sticking around, because if you enjoyed this evening, tomorrow we're going to do it all over again with lots of other highlights as well. But certainly the highlights for this evening is really launching the Declaration of European Balkan Partnership as well, a vision for the future of the Balkans outlined by Europe's most prominent thinkers and influencers as well, but more so those prominent thinkers and influences from the region as well, working together for a greater future together. So what's going to happen now is a kind of another healthy, productive discussion all about what it really actually means. So please put your hands together for the 3 distinguished guests we're going to invite onto the stage. So first of all, from the European Fund for the Balkans, Mr. Igor Bandovic. We also have from the Balkans in Europe Policy Advisory Group, Surgeon Majstorovic. There we are, my friend. And from the Balkans in Europe Policy Advisory Group, and also the Center for SEE Studies of the University of Graz, Mr. Florian Bieber.
In order to mark 2018 as a decade since the founding of European Fund for the Balkans, we have undertaken a wide and in-depth consultation process with the various stakeholders in the region and the key EU member states in order to draft Declaration of European Balkan Partnership, a document designed to reignite the spark of the EU enlargement process and democratic transformation of the Western Balkans countries, a set of concrete projects rounded up in the accompanying policy. Dear friends, I'm thrilled to stand before you tonight and to report on our work regarding the new policy initiative coming out of the kitchen of the EAB and the BIEPAG, European Balkans Partnership Agenda, consisting of two new policy documents, Declaration and the policy brief of the new European Balkan Partnership. Building on the 10 years of intensive work in the region and in the European Union member states, working with the think tanks, civil society organizations, public administration, policy analysts, and following up on the International Commission on the Balkans visionary document from 2005, we think that these documents, which are to be presented today, are building blocks of the new alliance and the steps which needs to be undertaken now. That Balkans Commission report described a famous scene of half-ruined post office at the beginning of Sarajevo, with 3 items of graffiti written on its wall. The first one stated Serbia, the second one, this is Bosnia, and someone scrolled underneath, no idiots, the post office. Well, guess what? That post office has been repaired and bought by the foreign telecommunications company. Yes, things have changed in the region. We can no longer look at the region like the peace accords were signed yesterday, because they were signed 20 years ago. In addition, there will be not much hope for the Balkans if it keeps following conventional policies, listening to trivial advices, and the lofty speeches. There is a need for a new brave thinking. It should overcome evident crisis of strategic imagination, both here, in the region, and in the EU. The reinvention of the region requires the construction of a common European vision and the emergence of European debate. Our agenda is an attempt to formulate such a vision, and the partnership we are offering is in the heart of it. Europe needs to recognize the importance of the Balkans to the future of the European project as a whole. Until now, the region has been perceived in terms of the risk. The idea of this initiative is to reformulate the debate on the future in terms of the major assumption behind the initiative is that European integration really needs ideology. The integration of the Western Europe was not so much the result of pragmatic calculation as of the intellectual and moral effort to discover European identity in the ashes of the Auschwitz. The European integration of the Balkans will remain half-hearted. It remains only bureaucratic. Over the 6 months, this initiative brought together the best minds, senior government officials, civil society leaders, academics and policy experts and journalists, to tackle the most pressing challenges facing the region and the EU, and to drive forward a renewed strategy of this partnership. They came together in the form of consultations, meetings, discussions in Brussels, in the region, and in the key member states, providing important insight to the hopes, concerns, expectations, limits we are facing today. As important were reality checks which curbed and sometimes almost kill our enthusiasm over this project. Reflecting our own bet on the people of the region and taking the wise advices from the senior European champion, this initiative intentionally adopted a bias on drawing on the next generation of leaders and experts, both in the region and in the European Union, to ground the initiative in a forward-thinking strategic perspective. This initiative has been a full team effort of the Balkans and Europe Policy Advisory Group and its members. I want to congratulate them on the amazing work that they did. Especially, I would like to thank Srđan Majstorović for serving as a lead rapporteur and coordinator for both the declaration and the brief, Florian Bieber for his guidance of our group initiative, and especially for the last year's work editing landmark study on stabilitocracy, which has become the most quoted new coined word explaining state of affairs in the Balkans. Here, I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Hedvig Morvai, who in her role as an executive director of the fund has championed and supported our work from the very start. Finally, the presentation you will hear from Srdjan and Florian are culmination of 6 months' work of the team and only the very beginning of what we hope will be a new vision for the Western Balkans and EU partners. To all of you, our dearest community, guests, friends, we would like to offer you to sign the declaration, and we would be honored if you endorse it, because we will be able then to send a strong message regarding the future of the Western Balkans within the EU. The declaration is open for signing as of now. To all those individuals and organizations who support ideas promoted, and we will be followed by the serious events in the EU member states, in the region, and of course in Brussels. This policy brief and the declaration serve as a programmatic guidance for the EIB, the pocket ever. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, this declaration that I'm about to present to you calls for establishment of a European Balkans Partnership because authors and signatories believe that only together EU and the Balkans can truly consolidate Europe as an area of peace, democracy, and security, and that a new vision is necessary which goes beyond the well-known existing larger technocratic solutions. There is a need to reimagine the region as firmly embedded in the EU. In the past 10 years, European Union and the Western Balkans have changed significantly as they have undergone various crises. 10 years later, the Balkans are back on the European agenda, bringing the possibility of more sincere relations and new partnership. The EU has recently realized that the need of revitalizing reforms and completing the Union in the Western Balkans. At this moment, some Western Balkan countries have made formal progress towards the EU membership, while others are still lagging. The full democratic transformation of the region thus still awaits its completion. The declaration recognizes that Europe's normative foundations are currently challenged, while in the Western Balkans, authoritarian tendencies have emerged once again. Hence, it advocates that these challenges should be embraced as an opportunity to continue building a common European Balkan partnership with the aim of a full EU membership for all countries of the region. 2018, with all its historical anniversaries and numerous events, is seen as a turning point for the region to seize this opportunity and sincerely embrace the EU integration path and converge democratically, socially, and economically. A European Balkans partnership must be based on a more sincere and transparent relationship, which prioritizes democratic transformation and calls the political leadership within the region to regain credibility by committing to a real transformation. The declaration reminds them that EU membership is not a matter of political convenience, but rather a political and socio-economic choice. The declaration states that the EU today does not need just any kind of enlargement. It needs a genuine commitment by both the EU and the Western Balkans. That is why rule of law, good governance, freedom of expression, gender equality, and a clear division of power are essential prerequisites of accession, which would make democratic transformation of the Balkans resilient. The declaration reminds that accession negotiations should not be based exclusively on institutional dialogue between the EU institutions and the governments of the region. The new European Balkan Partnership requires more. It requires a shared understanding of Europe's future and the role of the Balkans in the future European Union. Therefore, the declaration calls for a broader engagement of citizens in the accession process and a positive, constructive inclusion of civil society organizations, grassroots movements, and political opposition. Renewing and reconstructing the EU on the basis of more unity, solidarity, shared responsibility is essential for all citizens of Europe. The Balkans need to become part of a joint European debate. The declaration calls for new togetherness between the EU and the Balkans, focused on the 4 particular areas: more sincere and vigorous EU engagement with the Balkans, more systematic efforts to advance human capital in the region, an honest and lasting regional rapprochement, and closer cooperation in various policy areas in the future EU. The Declaration recognizes the special role of regional cooperation in the Western Balkans, not as an externally imposed condition, but a prerequisite of rediscovering common interest and forming a new regional identity within the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, authors and signatories of this declaration strongly believe that enlargement reconfirms the founding values of the Union. This declaration calls for a reunification of Europe, a Europe without division between us and them, but a Europe of all its citizens. European values are fundamental and appealing to all Europeans living in the Balkans. However, these values cannot be taken for granted, neither in the EU nor in the Western Balkan countries, and we all must jointly fight for them more passionately than we did until now, together in European Balkans Partnership. Thank you very much.
When the Balkans and Europe Policy Advisory Group began our work 4 years ago, and we discussed ideas how to analyze the problems of the region, we were often told that business as usual is fine, business as usual is delivering. And we were quite critical, and we are, in our discussions, we have many different opinions and different ideas and voices, but we were all thinking that business as usual is not delivering. It is not working. And we say it so very clearly in numerous documents over the years. And the recent kind of atmosphere has been recognizing, indeed, we need new tunes. We need new approaches to deal with this issue, as we've already heard earlier, of how to bring the Western Balkans, the Balkans, into the European Union. But we argue that this is not just a matter of changing the tune, but it's actually more so. It's in a certain way requiring a more comprehensive recomposition of this process. So in a certain way, to give more flesh, to give more additional material to the declaration, to provide specific ideas of how to realize this, the Balkans and Europe Policy Advisory Group has drafted a brief which outlines some ideas to move this debate forward and which could be implemented, discussed controversially, and put into practice in the coming years. As Srdjan has already mentioned, there are 4 areas we've looked at particularly. One is a new engagement of the EU with the Western Balkans. The second topic is the making use of human capital more effectively in the region. And thirdly, improving regional cooperation, and finally, thinking of the Balkans as part of Europe. And I will not go through the individual policy recommendations, but tell you really what this is about. What is the essence? So first, the topic of the EU engagement in the region. So the recommendations there focus on basically 4 issues. First of all, earlier engagement, making the steps of engagement, not waiting for too long, bringing them in early. The second one is putting resources in. Change, transformation requires resources. Third is be, but also be critical. I think Nicola said it very well when he said earlier that a friendship has to be based on a clear, open, and honest communication. We say this is what the Western Balkans need. It needs a genuine offer, but it also needs a critical friend who says, this is going wrong, this needs to be improved, and it needs to be public, it needs to be open, it needs to be transparent. And finally, we need to engage citizens. We need to engage citizens in the Western Balkans and in the European Union about the merits of this process. So this is how the first set of recommendations focuses on the European Balkan engagement. The second one focuses on how to improve human capital in the region, because this is what it's at the end of the day about. It's about making citizens' lives better, giving them a sense that they have a future, not just a future by leaving, but a future by staying. So, the departure hall of this event could actually be an arrival hall just at the same time.